The battle for the ideological soul of the Conservative Party.
Here we are, once again, once more into the breach.
Obviously, there's some discussion here with an eye on an election. Widely expected that the Conservatives will lose. There will be a degree of soul searching. Where do we go now? What's our ideological home? What do we actually think? What do we believe? How do we recover from this? If I was to kind of try and superimpose three groups on the Tory party that weren't just like very differing shades of like batshit mental, and you kind of have at the one end of that spectrum, you've got sort of Liz Truss's Growth Coalition, the people who are still convinced that leftist markets collapsed Liz Truss's premiership, leftist banks, and that what we need is a bonfire of red tape and taxation, and that will really stimulate the economy. In the middle, you've kind of got these like the Seb Paynites, the man who so desperately wants to be a Conservative MP, it hurts. The Onward think tankers, Michael Gove.
He's just an earnest member of the political lobby, Ollie, okay?
Not anymore. He runs a think tank now. He runs a think tank
There's
now.
nothing wrong with going from being a leading member of the lobby to going to being the leader of a think tank.
No,
and that's
and you
fine
leave
and healthy.
James Forsyth out of it just because he was political editor of The Spectator and now he's working in Number 10 does not mean...
It is a sign of a healthy democracy.
You take James Forsyth's fucking name out your mouth. Put some goddamn respect.
Do you
on
think
James
changing
Forsyth's
jobs should be illegal?
So you've got them, and they're kind of like as normal, really, as it can be. And then, most interestingly to me, you kind of have this. It's sort of 29 intakey, national conservative type.
19 intake.
Yeah.
The future projections of the 2029.
Yeah. Socially conservative, almost like a little bit Christian right. And this is obviously all hanging around this new conference that's wheeling into London town in a couple of weeks' time, Ed, which you've tried to via the proper channels gain access to unsuccessfully.
Yep. It's the National Conservatism Conference. It's run by the Edmund Burke Foundation, which I think
sounds very English, Edmund Burke.
Anglo-Irish even.
Yes.
It's a foundation, I think it was founded in 2019 or 2018, and it's essentially promoting the values of national conservatism, which I think is a very interesting proposition for an international body to do, as in whose nationalism, is it just the concept of nationalism in general?
Might it be American conservatism?
It could well be. But they're organising a conference over 3 days in a couple of weeks' time, and you got all the big guns of conservative thought there. I'm talking...
The big hitters.
Braverman. I'm talking Rees-Mogg, Douglas Murray. Senator J.D. Vance will be in on Zoom link. He's the guy who wrote Hillbilly Elegy.
Dial him in.
Yeah, smash or pass?
Smash.
Pass.
Oh.
Who else is on the list?
That you'd smash?
Yeah. Please.
Lord Frost.
Bang.
Darren Grimes.
Hard smash.
Toby Young. There is a dynamite session chaired by Andy No, the semi-alt-right, can we say that?
I think you can call him alt-right. Yeah.
The alt-right journalist is chairing a session which is featuring Darren Grimes and Toby Young, which I think that's the hottest ticket in town. I would love to see those three men in conversation about... I could listen to that for...
It's nice to see Darren Grimes getting some work again after nearly getting fined by the electoral roll. that was good, that, wasn't it?
It's probably the fundraise.
Did you see him the other day with the St. George's Cross behind him?
Yes.
He was like flying the flag like this, and he was screaming like, "No one can tell me I'm not English." And it's like, Darren, except your mum, whose house you live in.
keep it down, Darren.
Would you please stop banging the England flag against the wall?
But I think it's just interesting that there's this move by people who aren't just in the Conservative Party but are members of the government to entertain these ideas. Like, I spent a lot of time with members of the Conservative Party in the last year during the hustings, then at conference.
When you say these ideas, could you just kind of talk about that a little bit more? Like, what are the ideas we're talking? Do they have any? Is it just kind of a broad opposition to sort of like wokeness? What are we talking about?
It's a return to perceived conservative values. There's an emotionally stirring promotional video that they've published, which suggests that conservatives around the world look to Britain as the home of conservatism. And at the beginning, there's photos of the Queen, but like young, like 1952 coronation.
Hot Queen. Rangers Queen.
Rangers Queen, Hot Queen is talking about like the values of like the family, law and order, etc. But we've given way to something heinous and it's an image of a police officer kneeling in front of a Black Lives Matter protester.
Disgusting.
And there's images of the Union Jack on Regent Street being changed into the LGBT plus flag. No, and there's
For shame.
contrasting images of this one. I don't really understand the metaphor of or what the dynamic is here, but they're saying Just Stop Oil protesters throwing paint at a painting, and then it just cuts to stock footage of a family. I don't really know what they're
They
suggesting
are
is in
under
context.
threat. The nuclear family is under threat from Just Stop Oil.
Yep.
What painting are they throwing out?
Those daffodils.
Daffodils.
What is the Van Gogh one?
Yeah.
What, Van Gogh?
Yeah.
What is he like at the altar of good Christian?
100%, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I think
The
that's
first positive male role model.
Was he?
the most Christian thing to do is to cut off your ear and give it to prostitute.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
the most British thing you can do.
Do you know, Mary Magdalene, that's all I think about all the time. That's one thing my Catholic mother gets really upset about whenever I bring prostitutes.
Okay, there's two things I'd like to say about this. The first is whether or not the Conservative Party requires like a rightward drift towards national conservatism, whatever that is. I think personally
they're extremely right wing.
I think personally, looking at Rishi Sunak and his leadership in particular of the Conservative Party, I often fall into this trap of just referring to him as sort of like a technocrat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, good with spreadsheets, good with the books, problem solver. And actually, I think that is not the most accurate way of talking about him. If you look at recent policy announcements, or policy decisions, blocking gender recognition from Scotland, the first time Westminster government has used that power, and it's to block, legislation in relation to trans rights. The outlawing of laughing gas, like completely banal, like just insane, sort of like ASBO, tough on crime type shit. He's introducing legislation for, not content with the public order bill, enabling the police to break up protests that cause like general annoyance and nuisance to the public. He's rolling out new powers to the police that will enable them to break up and arrest protesters before they start protesting. How on earth they're going to come to the conclusion that that's happening is beyond me. If you take each of those things in turn, you don't take them in turn, you put them together, you have a pretty socially conservative, authoritarian policy platform there. Before even talking about the fact that they've closed down every single legal route for an asylum seeker to reach this country, the stigmatization of basically anyone from a foreign country coming here, that's deeply socially conservative, it's deeply authoritarian. And to describe, to be like, oh, there's this new movement of conservatives that we call national conservatives, it's kind of like, well, I think you've actually fucking got one in Downing Street right now, lads. I don't think there's like, this is going to be much of a departure away from where we are right now.
But what's your conclusion? What do you think that they're trying to achieve with this authoritarian? I don't know.
Well, Rishi Sunak's intention is obviously to appease socially conservative voters in the rest of the country, and the hedge is that that's enough for him to cling on to a majority. I think more nefarious forces are at work in relation to what happens post Rishi in the Conservative Party. If we're talking about this Edmund Burke Foundation, I can guarantee, we haven't got in there. Don't worry, viewers, we will get in there. But I guarantee you there is going to be some serious discussion about abortion rights. I have absolutely no doubt about that. I have no doubt there'll be further discussion about small boats, asylum seekers, whether or not we can make those people's lives any harder than we already do. It wouldn't surprise me if there's some discussion of gypsy Roman traveller people there as well.
Yeah, but I think that I don't think it's because that Rishi Sunak is inherently evangelical, but I do think that evangelical principles are rolled out into a country under your government because you're trying to claw back some sort of control. Mm-hmm. So you think about like the American right, the most evangelical propositions have, forced their partners into getting abortions or have slept with prostitutes or are just deeply heinous people. I think that the socially conservative movement isn't to get Britain back on the nuclear family route. It's to get some sort of control and order back into the fray. I mean, look, I might be going off on a tangent here.
Please do.
But so think about how most people now go to university. We now have the most educated population we've ever had. The social strata is being broken, right? Mm-hmm. There's now more chance that if you come from a less well-off background, you're going to make a good pit of money for yourself. If you're a socially conservative person who's got hereditary wealth, that is a huge threat to you, and you might want to kind of instill some new evangelical proposals to kind of try and rein that in a bit. Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks very much for watching that video all the way to the end. And if you liked it, I've got some better news for you. PoliticsJOE is in the process of launching a podcast. Live in a couple of weeks' time. It's called the Pubcast. Link below, probably somewhere in the comments or the description, something like that. Check it out. Subscribe so you get ready for our first episode. It's coming soon. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or any of those other slightly weirder platforms. See you soon.